Thank you. We'll have questions and answers after all three have spoken as well, so it isn't like it's the last chance you get to talk to them. Plus, they'll be around afterwards, so you can have a little private chat if you needed to for a bit. Next, we've got a gentleman that we're happy he's able to join us today because the county plays a big role in all of this. And I want to introduce Mr. Sean Nelson, who's the Orange County Supervisor, and he's got some slides to show us as well, and also some discussion on what the county is doing or trying to do or has done to resolve the issue that we all face.
Thank you. All right, good evening. Everybody hear me okay? Yes? In the back? All right. My name is Sean Nelson. I'm your county supervisor, and there's a lot to be said on this topic. I don't need slides to go through this. We deal with this every day, but I thought it would be helpful to give you some information, just statistical data. There's a lot of misinformation that goes on when we deal with homelessness. And you know, I often find the role it's sort of, hey, you defend this, that, and the other. Look, I'm your neighbor. I ran for office. It doesn't mean I have magical powers, and I'm not king. So I can tell you what the county does, but please don't misunderstand that that's how I do it, because sometimes I lose votes, or that that's the way I think it ought to be done. So there's a difference if you say, hey, tell me what is being done. There's a distinction, and people struggle with that. If I tell you what the county's doing, it's, well, you SOB Nelson, why are you doing it that way? Because I want to do it a different way, and I couldn't get the votes or the support to do it. So that will get lost, not because you're bad people, it's because you're human. But just, I may remind folks of that as we go through this, and I'll take any question. Listen, I wanted to do this to solve problems, but please understand one thing. As we all deal with this, and it's my responsibility every day as your representative to be boots on the ground, what I think gets lost, because I hear a lot of people come to our meetings, they have opinions, and they're welcome to espouse them. But understand one thing. It's not as though all our neighbors figured out how to fix this, and we're the last group to catch on, that if only we just followed the magic formula, we wouldn't have this issue. This issue is out of control. Natalie from my office is here. Every week, I send multiple articles to my staff from Denver, from Honolulu, from Phoenix. Everybody's struggling with this problem. We could probably all sit around and postulate why, and we'd probably be pretty close to right in most cases, right? There's a lot of issues: drug addiction, mental illness, housing affordability. Those are the reasons we still have to deal with it. But I would just suggest to you, Orange County, our cities, not Orange County, me, the county, us, the county. Orange County does a pretty good job under the circumstances. Doesn't mean we're done, it doesn't mean we're declaring victory, but this is a very complex issue. The litigation realm makes it even more complex because everyone's afraid of their shadow. There are some great police officers that get involved in this area of work. It is where their heart wants them to be. But man, these people walk on eggshells every day, because if they do anything wrong, we're in a world with the camera up front, everybody's got a mobile television studio in their pocket. So every decision will be second guessed, and you know, that's just the world we live in. We're not going to change that. So without further ado, just a couple of real quick misunderstandings. We get a lot of comments at the Board of Supervisors. You know, not so much we believe you have unlimited resources. Everybody knows there's a limit, but people struggle to understand what those limits are. They hear, well, there's a $6 billion budget, for example, you'll see on the next slide, that means certain things, but it doesn't mean other things. Why has the county done anything? We've done a lot. We haven't solved the problem. There's more to do, but probably more has been done in the last 18 months than in the prior 18 years. That means that we're moving in the right direction, if nothing else. The other, and there was sort of a question earlier, why doesn't the county just close down the riverbed? It's not that easy. And if we closed down the riverbed, the slide that you saw about the calls to the riverbed would be calls to your local neighborhoods, and there probably are some of those already anyways. But the last thing that any of us wants to have happen is push people out of the riverbed to have them just in your neighborhood. That moves the problem around a little bit. A lot of cute, anecdotes like squeezing a balloon or whatever you want to call it. But the issue is to try to solve the problem best we can. This problem's never going to go away. It's been with us since the beginning of mankind. There's nothing I or any of us going to do to solve it completely, but it can certainly be managed a lot better than it is. To just give you some basics, this is a bunch of numbers. Just look at the big one on top. 6.2 billion is the county budget, but understand that the overwhelming majority of that budget, what the county is we are an arm of the state to administer their programs, and in many cases the federal government through the state. Most of that money, the overwhelming majority of it, we can hire the particular vendors that administer the service, but we have no say in what they actually use the money for. Public protection, obviously the biggie, excuse me, but you can kind of see the list. I won't go through it, but the important thing on the bottom is the remaining funds, after we spend it on the things we're obligated to spend money on, or the things that are of utmost need in this county, you've got about $33.9 million that we had last year left. And on your right are the asks from the agencies that are saying, hey, we need, not we'd like, we need this additional money to do the things the citizens are requiring us to do for next year. The need's bigger than what we've got. The purpose for being here tonight is not to give you a civics lesson in how California changed things during Prop 13, but there's one statistical item that's important to all of us. The County of Orange gets less back on our property taxes, 6%, than any county in the state. That's important because this number right below the 6.2 billion, I don't know if this, see right there? That number should be about $700 million more if we just got the average. There's a lot of unfairness in Prop 13, if that's the right word. There's just a lot of inequity in the way the numbers are. We're not going to change that. And I don't think there's any county up and down the state that's going to give up their allocation for us to get more going forward. Folks, it sucks, but it's been our reality for a very long time. Orange County does a lot through public-private partnerships that other counties don't, because they don't have to. And that's just the reality of it. You can stay and chat about that later. I'm happy to go into detail, but that's not really why we're here tonight. Homeless funding sources. What of your money is spent dealing with this topic? One of my colleagues went to the city of Anaheim and made a statement about there's a lot of extra money available. Yeah. That was awful nice of him to say that. If he could point out to any of us where that is, that would be helpful. And that's the polite way to address that. But here are just a few items. Orange County Community Resources. This is the biggie. This is what limits homelessness. Remember, we've got the problem we've got. It could be much bigger. Most of you have heard of Section 8. It's subsidies for people that cannot afford rent in the county. Section 8 is way oversubscribed. You've got $143 million currently being spent to keep people, families from being homeless. That is not the need. It's not $143 million. We have 9,812 households being served, as you can see on the slide. But if we lined up everybody that's asking for a subsidy, it's 41,000. If that $143 million number were $500 million, we'd probably start satisfying the need in a very expensive area that does not have enough housing, not enough affordable housing. We are jammed up as a county in a number of areas. So we don't have extra money, but as you can see pretty quickly, if we double just this pot right here, we've already got back orders, and we couldn't even fill them all. It means what it means, right? I could sit and give you my version, but these are statistics these are our realities. Veterans Affairs, I will say, I know that the county, I'd like to thank every county, certainly your county, makes a priority out of veterans. They served our country in many cases. PTSD and some other things that came from their services have left them in a circumstance that deserves some special attention. I wish we were serving more. You'll see on a later slide, we're building some more housing, both in our district. Orange is not in my district, but West Anaheim is. West Anaheim meaning not the West Anaheim people call that a little different. West Anaheim people are like west of Beach, but west of the 57. So Flatland Anaheim is in the 4th district. But there is a facility being built in Placentia. I know Supervisor Bartlett's working on trying to get one in South County, and there's been talk about where the Tustin Marine Corps Station is for additional veterans housing. But again, you can see this safety net for medical care. These are not small numbers. These are enormous numbers of people being served, to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases for behavioral health. It's not that money isn't being spent. I'm more open to criticism. It's a bureaucracy. I was someone that did not like government, and I was an antagonist. I came to fix it. So I'm not going to apologize for bureaucracy, but I also acknowledge that it's an oil tanker you're trying to take through a slalom course. And the idea that I'm just going to shake it up and reinvent it, I've tried, made some progress, but it's still going to be a bureaucracy when I'm gone. These are big numbers, big programs with a lot of people that are being served, and it is fairly complex. Now, when you get to county facilities, what we are missing a lot of is this is not a technical term, but we don't have a lot of good step one alternatives. Step one to me is picture Hurricane Harvey, right? If there was an emergency today, what would you do with people? A cot, a shower, toilet, a chow line, and some shelter. We're missing that, and that's a big key to why we can't or haven't, can't's the wrong word, we could, it's why we haven't gotten all the people off the river. So one of the things that we've had for a long time, you've had the armories, so the armories in Fullerton and Santa Ana, some of you know, some of you don't, those have been in our communities for decades. I lived at 1854 West Avenue, it was 3 doors down from the armory. I bought my house when it was 3 doors down from the armory. I sold it to my brother-in-law who still owns it and raises his twins there. I get a lot of people saying, well, you wouldn't put this in your backyard. Actually, I would and did. No one else would, but I actually never had a problem with them. Armory was very well run. The armory in Fullerton, unfortunately, is flawed, like the one in Santa Ana. It's not open 24/7 because the armory is National Guard property. They need it for their uses during the day, so they require no evidence that anyone was there during the evening by 6 a.m. And it's not open during summer months. So the idea originally for more step one is what the armory provides. You don't need an appointment. We take all comers, show up, we will house you. The idea was move the Fullerton Armory to a more permanent location. Let's get a toehold 24/7 year-round where we can provide service. We bounced around with a couple of proposals. If you don't know this, and we don't need to spend a lot of time on it tonight unless you'd like to, there's one thing for certain with homelessness. Everyone would like it to be solved, and everyone would like it to be solved somewhere other than near them. And it is sort of funny sometimes. I have a lot of scars from the fight, but the fight hasn't been to force anything other than for people to acknowledge we're in one of the densest places in the United States. You don't think that, probably. But of the 5 densest large cities in the United States, my guess is, if I had to bet money, everyone in this room would guess 4 out of the 5. New York, Frisco, Philly, Chicago, right? Who would guess number 5, Santa Ana? Right? People have heard my speech before. There's no place in our county, none, that isn't near schools, churches, homes, and businesses. That's what happens when you're one of the densest urban environments in the United States. There's no place that's there, because there is always near somebody's here. And what we found after going through several years, several communities saying, hey, we want to help, and then you pick a site and they'd shut you down, we finally ended up with Kramer. Kramer is a valuable tool, and it provides a great spot for people that really will accept help, can get cleaned up, either get on their meds, they want to find a job. But Kramer did not turn out to be what it was supposed to be. Kramer was supposed to be a step 1 facility. It's still needed, and it's a big part of our menu. But what Kramer's really turned out to be, doesn't matter whether it's step 2 or 3, but it's not a step 1. You cannot just show up there without an appointment. It's not going to house all the people it needs. It's going to be more facility service intensive for people that can use them. It's a great piece of our puzzle that we need, but unfortunately, do I keep pushing the wrong button, unfortunately? All right, I'm not doing that to distract anyone.
I'm sorry.
So Kramer, at its build out, will have an additional 100 beds fairly soon. But what we skipped over was the larger facility for people for triage. So what we're currently left with, you've got Placentia Veterans Village that I mentioned, and then you've got crisis stabilization units that the county has partnered with a lot of our healthcare providers really to keep the mentally ill out of emergency facilities. We don't need them in an emergency room, and frankly, the hospitals don't want them there either. They don't need their leg reset, or they don't need a defibrillator. They need to be housed and get a chance to kind of calm down and get on their proper medications, etc. This is just a map I put together to kind of give you a sense of where are the main housing facilities and where are they not. The lines are drawn kind of by me, just to show you. North County, where we live, there's 2 facilities. Central County, as you can see, there's 2 facilities. But these beach communities that do have a significant problem, I mean, Fountain Valley, Huntington Beach, they've got a major problem. But any talk of putting a facility, you're a heretic. And you are the enemy, and you will be punished. I kid, it's a little bit funny, sort of. I have the scars to prove it. All I've mentioned at times is that the county owns property that could be used, and it was an immediate media campaign to, call our office and tell us what bad people we were for even pointing out that there's land there, which, by the way, there is, and it wasn't up to me. But you see mostly Irvine, Lake Forest, South County cities. Probably less homeless need, but no facilities. South County, just largely devoid. There is a facility in Laguna that's not on the map, but we should have put that there. They've done a nice job. They were kind of fighting the beach element. And then, there's just Newport Beach, Costa Mesa Heights stuff. Again, they're just different quadrants that have problems, but there are no facilities. What we're facing in Orange County now is we actually could get the people that want to be off the river, we could get them off. We should. But we don't want to. And it's not comfortable saying that, but the reality is the county has an inventory of property that they've had long before I had anything to say about it. And there's an inconvenient reality that anytime you acknowledge where that property exists, where could we go on a short-term basis? Right? If we had to go look for property and things, that's going to take years. Kramer Place, beginning to end, was probably a 2.5-year process at least. So if there was a massive earthquake or a hurricane, do you think we'd take 2 years looking for a place to set up tents? Of course not. We would deal with it immediately. And we have property, we could deal with this issue immediately right now. We have 100 acres in Orange County that has been pre-approved for homeless facilities. It's flat, and the neighbors are Second Harvest Food Bank, an OCTA plus base, 30-plus acre piece of property where OCTA at some point intends to park trains between this property and the 405 freeway. And it happens to be in a city that is very uncomfortable with the notion of putting any homeless people in their city. That's just the honest truth. To say that immediately gets out the arrows that I'm a bad person. It's kind of like you admit the emperor has no clothes. I didn't choose where the county owned real estate, but I can tell you we do, and there's only one parcel where it's essentially paved. Second Harvest is in an old building that was on the Marine Corps facility. That's probably not the best permanent facility, but if we had an emergency, which some might argue we do, it would be available. If that fire that just went through had burned the homes to the level that's burned them in Northern California,
Right.
I don't think that there'd be any hesitation to immediately deal with the issue there. So I'm not going to, flip the apple cart over and start casting blame. All I can tell you is I've made that speech. It doesn't make me a better person, but it is the honest truth. We could deal with this. I've asked my colleagues to deal with this, and there's no takers. I mean, and that's just the short answer. There's no appetite to do that. So here's what I project will happen. Remember what I asked in the beginning. So I can tell you what I think will happen. You can ask me how I feel about that, but don't think that what the county's about to do is my prescription for how to do it, and don't read into it how I feel. right? If I ask you, go out in the parking lot, tell me the color of the first car you see, it would be a mistake to interpret that you like that color. Fair enough? So here's what I think what is likely to happen given the will of the board where I currently serve. I think you're going to start seeing, probably further south, an effort to start getting people out of the river, removing locations that are sort of an invitation to camp. Probably see more areas getting fenced off, smaller groups being relocated at a time. And the reality is there is a certain percentage of the population that is not going to go, no matter what service is offered, for their own reasons. I mean, we could all guess what they are. We'd probably be close to right, and some we wouldn't. You know, everybody's an individual, but generally speaking, there's some common characteristics. We have probably will learn some hard lessons there. We'll probably struggle through some lawsuits and hopefully figure out what is or isn't going to be allowed. And that process will work its way up north. And, you know, you will get, my guess is to the Riverbed area probably after the first of the year, the Riverbed being kind of the Anaheim orange area. And you just take it by segments. And unfortunately, you know, the status that we're in right now, if you push people out, you will end up dealing with it in the city. And I have nothing but respect for my colleagues, you know, Mike that spoke. But I just want to point out to something. I'm a Fullerton resident. And I was at a Rotary Club event in Brea a week ago. And the one thing I wanted to ask is the chief was there. And I said, Chief, let me ask you a question. What parts of Brea are not the responsibility of Brea PD? And he looked at me, you know, what are you talking about? I said, well, okay, let's get specific. There's no trick here. If there are areas inside flood control channels, but they're in the city of Brea, would you like the sheriff to patrol those? And his answer, expectedly, is, of course not. It's our jurisdiction. The county does not have jurisdiction over the flood control. We've taken it. We sent sheriffs there. I wanted to send them there a year ago. It's frustrating. But I want to assure you something. There's a DMV in Santa Ana. If there's a crime or something going on in the parking lot, they don't call the highway patrol. That's not how it works. There are city limits all over Orange County, and there are some areas that are unincorporated, and there are some cities that contract with the sheriff. Yorba Linda contracts with the sheriff. They've got a crime, the sheriff will patrol that area. But there is no part of Anaheim proper where the sheriff is invited to patrol, let alone has any business doing patrol. Now, if they are out there, like any peace officer anywhere in the state, they're authorized to arrest people if they commit crimes. I mean, that's how peace officers work. But there's no part, zero, of the city of Anaheim proper that the county sheriff is supposed to patrol. There's no part that the highway patrol is supposed to patrol. I go to the USC games for tailgaters. There's a state park police for that state park. So there are unique circumstances kind of in our urban environments where sometimes a unique law enforcement department has a different jurisdiction. Cal State Fullerton has the Cal State Fullerton Police. That's well known within the city limits of Fullerton. They have their own department. But the county, I'm telling you, all five of us, I only speak for one, but I can share with you, you know, we are not going to sit around and wait and have this turf battle. I think the law enforcement guys have had it too long, and we just got sick of it. We ordered the sheriff to just go in there. And so they're in there in many cases in places where, from a law enforcement standpoint, they're not primary. They're not supposed to be patrolling there. They are, and they will continue to. But this idea that they have the responsibility to patrol in the riverbed is not accurate. It is an assignment that they will do, and they'll do happily at this point, and they're going to work with their adjoining neighbors. I mean, that river goes everywhere from Yorba Linda to the ocean, as you know. There is one location where we have this issue, and it just happens to be the one we're talking about. We don't have this issue in Yorba Linda or Placentia, but you know, for reasons that are our own, we have it locally. I could spend a lot of time on just details and information, but I mean, that's sort of the county's inventory of what we've got and what we're spending money on. You know, going forward, my objective is to find more step one. We need to deal with the urgency of people being on the street and not having a place to go. And I think what you'll hopefully see, if we can find an address the world will tolerate, that my board will support, that's where the focus is. And that's, in my opinion, where the immediate need is. Like has been said before, I don't have a time agenda. I'm happy to stay till midnight, but I guess we'll take, we'll take 3 questions now, and if we have 100 later, we'll stick around and deal with those. Yes.
So my question, the riverbed problem in Orange is in the area where we see it, where the largest area is over by Anaheim Stadium,
Right.
which is where UC Irvine is and where also the county jail is. So when from what I've heard from other discussions is that if there's a mental health or a 5150, they're brought to UC Irvine. And then they're screened there because that's one of the places where they can screen for mental health. If they pass the screening, they just let them go out the door. So if that person came from Newport Beach, now they're dropped off right by the riverbed where they see tents and where they know they can probably camp and stay. So if the county knows that that's a problem area, all the other areas that you talked about where they're not patrolling the riverbed or where they're patrolling it themselves is because there's nobody on it. Or there's a small amount of people on it. There's 700 people in that area where Anaheim, where the Angel Stadium is. I would think that the county, with them owning that and that being such a problem area, that they would throw in and also patrol that area with Orange Police.
We have. I mean, that's if you go there now.
But if you own that, then it's not only their responsibility, it's the county's responsibility. They're the ones that put the signs up that says you
Sir.
can't camp there.
Well, that's not what the sign says, but that's not irrelevant. I don't disagree with you. You're right. Law enforcement agencies have a very specific ego. I'm not a law enforcement officer, but I can just tell you that despite the 5150s, I had a family member that was recently committed. It was in Newport Beach. It was not at the county facility. It was not at UC Irvine. It was a very quiet facility. The beds that we funded they're not at UC Irvine. So they're in different places. I mean, there may be a misunderstanding there, but listen, I had a Fullerton resident come into my office talk about soccer facilities who happened to be an LAPD officer that's a homeless liaison. And one of the things he told me is when he picks up people because they're doing whatever they're doing to get arrested versus just the other stuff, he said the most common thing that he's hearing is take me to Fullerton or the Riverbed. He doesn't do it. I made him promise me, but clearly we've gotten to a point where that's become a magnet and it's a problem.
That's where the facilities are.
Well, not so much. I don't think that's why they're on the riverbed. They're on the riverbed.
X is on your map, right?
Well, the homeless facilities that are on the map, other than Kramer, have been there for decades. I mean, that's
And
accurate.
the people that use those facilities are
One
there.
question per person, please, because of time.
Sorry, you have to use your later. Go ahead. Another question.
To help maybe Supervisor Nelson out, Tustin had an agenda item recently where, no, I think it was a planning
We're not
commission.
doing statements. We're just doing questions.
Well, I'm just trying to say, there was an
Mohammed,
attempt.
we're going to do this after. I'll stick around.
Yeah.
You should stick around. Let's just do the questions right now.
And we're familiar with you, so we don't need your diatribe, but thank you. We're
Victoria,
familiar.
Victoria,
Okay,
move the
well,
microphone.
No,
I
it's
just-
the truth.
Okay, yeah, I have a
Ask your question, please.
question.
Ask your question.
So my question is, Supervisor Nelson, I respect you, I think, as a human being.
That's a statement, not a question.
I hope,
So what's your question?
my question is, so you talked a little bit about Irvine, and so Irvine is a city and it has a city council and there's a council member
Hit me
named.
with the punchline, Mohammed.
Yeah,
What's
there's
the
a-
question? I promise you I'll stick around afterward. Just give me the punchline.
Yeah.
What's the question?
Would you be willing to
Yes.
meet with Councilmember Melissa Fox about
She in Tustin?
Melissa Fox is in Irvine, right? She's the only Democrat on the city council in Irvine, and so she's agreed to meet with some people from the community and some council members in Santa Ana and Anaheim. You know,
Question, will I meet with her? The answer is yes, of
about
course.
the potential.
Absolutely.
And so, can you commit to a time where you'd be willing to?
That's you can arrange.
I'll
You
do
can
that
arrange
with her,
that
and
with him.
no, it would be unlikely I would ever be in a meeting with you. I've learned the hard way that would be a mistake.
Okay, we have another
Okay.
question right here.
Oh, go ahead.
One of the reasons you stated that people aren't getting involved in supporting more shelters is maybe they don't really have a sense that there's an emergency. And is the county doing, or any government agencies doing, stuff to emphasize that emergency and urgency to, its citizens? I know this is definitely part of that, and we've been involved with that, but is there anything maybe above and beyond that?
I hope so. That's a fair question. I don't know that we've done a good enough job. If you get down to the riverbed, I don't think you need a lot of explanation. There was a time when you could see it a little more clearly from the 57. Part of the challenge I think that the riverbed has provided is as long as it's there, it's not in Pearson Park and it's not in some other places, and it's become convenient to push it there. I don't know, and I'm not making an allegation, but I'm concerned that many of these people have gravitated there because it's easy to exist there, and that alone is a problem. The idea is not to create a magnet on the Anaheim-Orange border. Clearly that's happened. I mean, that's why the sheriff is down there. That's why we have a CityNet contract to just trying to ascertain who are all these people. And what was mentioned earlier, so many of the people that are there, because their heart and their religion tell them they need to be looking out for people that are less fortunate. And that is a righteous thing to do. But delivering services specifically to the riverbed may not be making that problem better. In fact, it may be causing some other problems. I mean, many of the people that I've talked to along the riverbed, one, there's many reasons to be there, but one of them is it's become a bit of a one-stop shop. There's so many things being brought to that location that if you were somewhere kind of off the grid a little bit, you'd have to work pretty hard to get all of the giveaways that are being brought right there. And it's sort of, you become your own problem. You put people there to deal with the situation, and it's, I don't want to get myself in trouble using the wrong little anecdote, but if you serve people in a location, it's likely they'll keep coming back. And obviously this deserves an answer. I would like the answer to be a little quicker. I've lost that vote so far. I'm big enough to keep in the fight. I don't think it's because the people that share the ability to vote with me are bad folks. They're not seeing the vision, they're not interested in the political fight, whatever the issue is. But right now it's not there. I wish it was, because I think we could do a lot of good and have already done it. And again, that doesn't make me a better person, and I'm not looking to escape any scars from anybody because, hey, I would have fixed it, but go easy on me, beat them up. I don't like that this problem has gotten as bad as it has. I don't like, and I'm embarrassed, that our county hasn't done more sooner. We should have, and we could have. And anyone that says otherwise is not being honest. It's not because we have a couple $100 million. I don't try to apologize for other people's statements. That's just inaccurate and not helpful.